Folks, it is a special privilege to sit across the board from the reigning North American Scrabble champion, and I was able to do just that earlier this year against Mack in his quest to repeat as champion. As a fellow Scrabble YouTuber himself, Mack graciously joined me to analyze both of our games from this year's championship, starting with our action-packed and highly strategic battle from round 12. I've won a bunch of games to sort of get back towards the top. And of course, my reward is to go up against Mack, who is at 9-2 in second place, only behind Kenji Matsumoto. So I go first, and since the shorter plays like Norm from this rack don't keep quite good enough leaves to prioritize, I play the standard Merlon to open the game, and Mack has a very similar choice on his hands with the option to play just Oi or Yo here for 14, but instead opting for Muri for 20 to get those extra points. I draw the awkward WWX combo, and without a good way to use my X here, I decide to set it up with Hewer for 24, which the engine does like, but unfortunately for me, Mack has one and only one playable bingo of biplanes for 66, which also blocks my setup in the process. Still, I can't be that upset as I can get down Oxid for 42, and Mack draws the first blank and makes an absolutely fabulous find here of Cuticula for 63, once again his only playable bingo.
So I didn't automatically play this. I had to answer two other questions. Number one, of course, do I have any other bingos that play? It's not at all easy to go through all the possibilities with a blank on your rack with this low probability rack too. It's not the kind of rack that comes up very often. So after spending, I think, 2 or 3 minutes, I did convince myself there were no other playable bingos. I briefly entertained the idea of not bingoing here, which sometimes can be a way to go when you have a blank. I considered plays like a cut to the right of Oxid, making Sosa, XU, and It, which scores 23, keeping ALU blank. Ultimately, I decided it was just a little too much to give up. I'm giving up 40 points. I'm still keeping a U, which is going to hamper my bingo chances. So I decided for 40 extra points, I would deal with the opening it gave Will and take the bingo, which I do think computer evaluation agrees with.
Feel like this is a really high level find. There's not a lot of players that I would think would just reliably find this each and every time that it's available, and you are one of those players. So you take a good size lead, and this is my draw. I'm okay with this because I'm going to have opportunities to score well in the lower corner. This is exactly what you were alluding to. Why you were reluctant to play this is it makes these really big spots in the corner. Really interesting to try to decide between Wall, War, and Ward here. It actually appears that Ward, just by virtue of scoring 3 more points, is probably worth it, even though keeping a U on your rack is generally not something you want to do. Just looking at the board after any of these options down low, I'm making a good J spot for myself, and keeping JU is arguably a little more flexible to draw a whole bunch of consonants that let me actually play with jaw next turn. Ultimately, Wall is the play I make. I think if I had it to do over again, I would probably play Ward, but it's very, very close. And back over to you, Mac, and you draw the Q, but that's not horrible here.
Yeah, I was pretty thankful here to have a fairly straightforward decision after, like I said, tanking for I think upwards of 5 minutes on the cuticular turn. You know, the Q is generally the worst tile in Scrabble, especially when you don't have a U on your rack. And now I'm seeing after my 2U bingo and Will's last play of all, there's only one U left, which means I'm fairly unlikely to get it anytime soon. And I have a pretty easy way to get rid of the Q to the right of biplanes, so I'm thankful to just do that, take my 25 points, and also block Will from using that triple. So this play came down pretty quickly. There really is nothing else to consider here.
Yeah, for sure. I have another tricky situation here. I have 3 plays that I'm considering. Ahi right here with Jaw jumped out pretty quickly, a Jar in the same spot, and then Jake. I think I might have slightly overvalued the caliber of bingo leave that ADIR is here, and maybe slightly undervalued the K as a nice tile to keep on a board that's not very good for bingoing. I think maybe if I had this to do over again, I would play Ahi down low, but again, really, really close plays, and you draw kind of nicely, but no bingo for you just yet.
Correct. I can make an extremely fishy play just getting rid of a B, say, with something like buy or ab for just 7 points. DEINST is a fantastic lead that's probably going to bingo honestly close to 80% of the time. But the problem with making these fishy plays, right, is it's going to make blatantly obvious to Will what I'm doing, right? If Will sees me play ab for 7 points, he's probably going to block, in which case I'm often going to have a bingo and nowhere to play it. And a bingo that doesn't play is, as I always like to say, as good as no bingo at all. Instead, I decided to take a kind of more middling approach. I played Dib over there, which scores upwards of 20 points, still keeps a very nice leave in ENST that's going to bingo fairly often. I'm pretty happy with this choice.
And I think it's instructive too that in this the process of making this move, you are obstructing the Merlin's hook quite a bit, which is the best S hook on the board, but you're the one that's already ahead in this game. I'm trailing. I'm likely to make a spot for you because I'm the one that needs the real estate on the board to remain open. So it makes a lot of sense to be patient from your standpoint there. In response, my rack has a couple eyes. I ended up playing just Odic here almost by default. And when you look at the choices, the only play that's close to this is Iodic using the other eye. So I thought about that. Maybe I want to leave the eye off of this, not only for the possibility of iodic, but also sodic is a word too. And maybe if I draw an S, I'll be happy to have that lane open. Whereas if I play iodic, that definitely cuts off a little bit more space on the board long term. And now a really interesting one for you, Mac, with neatest on your rack, but nowhere to play that 7. This is a tricky turn deceptively.
Yeah, for sure. This is kind of what I was getting to, guys, with the last play, right? If I had made a very fishy play like Ab, I would have ended up oftentimes with a rack like this in the same situation where our bingo didn't play. And at least now I'm in the situation having scored 26 on my last turn as opposed to 7. And again, I kind of have the same situation where I can play off just an E and a T, get rid of my 2 duplicates. I could be very aggressive, even play something like Tall and TE if I really want to force a bingo line open on my next turn. Generally speaking, I try to avoid fishing when I'm ahead. When I'm ahead, I want to make plays that are a little bit lower variance and don't open me up to just getting into these 10, 12 point scoring cycles without hitting a bingo and allowing my opponent to just keep scoring reasonably and catching up. So I decided instead to kind of split the difference as I did in the last turn and play Teak, which does have the added benefit of setting up my S for stake. On average, my rack is still going to be better than Will's at this point. He could play Odic with a very wide range of racks that could be very good. They could also be mediocre, as it turns out his rack was. So I think this is a good play, keeps a great leave, scores pretty well, and opens a line that certainly could prove useful for me to get down another bingo and really take good control of this game.
Definitely like the rationale behind that play. A little concerned about what might happen if I open the board right now after a play like that. So I'm thinking about that a little bit. But ultimately, as I'm looking around the board for candidate plays, it becomes quickly clear that I have one standout play as long as I can work up the courage to play it. And ultimately, I do try to just trust my instinct that Cuticula does in fact take an R hook, and I play Sithara for 40. Mac, of course, does not bat an eye when I play this. Your sort of impassive response made me feel much better, Mac.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great play not only to spot, but also just in terms of the game state. I'm only up 1 point at this point. I again thought for a while here, and I mainly considered 2 very, very different plays. The more kind of fishy, bingo aggressive play of Oi under Will's play of Jake, which actually looks really good at first. It scores well. It scores 27 points, which is pretty good for a 2-tile fish, keeping AENST, right? Normally this is a standout play, but there's 2 problems with this play. The most obvious problem is it creates a massive opening, right? There are a lot of letters that go in front of OY to make 3-letter words. And again, Will could have anything. He could easily be about to hit me with a big play or even worse, a bingo down the A column, hitting that triple word and scoring massively. And even if he doesn't have a bingo, I think he's fairly likely to play there just to, if nothing else, take away the spot from me. And I run into the same issue as I have on the past 2 turns. AENST is a great lead, but a lot of times my bingos aren't going to play, or they're not going to play very well. There just
Yeah.
aren't a ton of good lines, right?
Where is
For
it going? Where is it going?
exactly.
Yeah.
Like I ran through some possibilities. It's like I'm often going to have to bingo, say, above the N in Merlin if I have anything that plays. And if I bingo there with a 7, I'm scoring 62. and I'm giving Will a huge opening. So instead here, I decided to play Nosy and Stake, which scores a lot more points.
Now, the engine likes this play slightly, and I think a huge part of the reason why there's actually surprisingly few vowels left that play above the Y. There's only two A's and two O's from your perspective, unseen. The B's are on the board. One of the two M's is on the board. I'm going to have a lot of racks here that literally do not play above that Y, whereas you retain an A, knowing full well that you are going to go into next turn with at least one vowel that plays above that Y. So it is way more advantageous to you than usual. I do actually have a vowel that plays there, but I don't really have a good way of hitting that spot up there. I ended up playing my F here just to be aggressive and set up a really nice S hook for myself with the longs leave, fully expecting that I'm going to draw an E a lot of the time. That makes that leave significantly better. Of course, an I would make it even better with the NG combination. Instead of just keeping the G without the IN combination to go with it, I could sacrifice points and play Ganef here, which is a lot less, but it certainly leaves better with the ELS combination as opposed to the longs leave, which is not that great. Certainly when you don't hit a bingo, you're going to be less flexible after that. The other move I thought about here was literally just playing faux, playing my E to get a bunch of extra points in full knowledge that 6 more E's are coming. And this actually wins the sim on that basis. When I play this E, I'm going to get a bunch more points and have a good likelihood of redrawing the E from the bag. So I'll still have a nicely balanced leave and maybe a bingo, but I'll have gotten an extra 6 points out of the bargain. So anyway, I play FE, and it puts you in a bit of a tricky situation, but your rack is so terrible that you don't really have to think too hard about it, actually.
Exactly. I knew that there was a very solid chance that Will held one of the two S's, and I'd love to do something about this if sook. The problem is I can't. I guess I shouldn't say I can't, right? I can. I could play something like Tet and Tat for 7 points, keeping AIMT. But again, guys, I'm only up 14 here, and you can't play like this when you're only up 14 points. If I'm up 114, then sure, maybe I consider making that kind of play. But in this case, I have to absolutely just take my 30 points or so for Tatami, clear out this rack.
Yeah, for sure. Tatami, runaway best play. Nicely spotted for sure. And I have the other S now. So I've set up my S. I've drawn the second one. I'm feeling good about that. But I do not have a bingo. And I have kind of a tough situation on my hands. But I felt like he's just played 6 tiles. I know I've got both of the S's on my rack. But could he have drawn the other F? Could he draw the blank? Would I potentially need another threat on the board as opposed to just leaving the board in its current state? Maybe. So that was sort of my thinking behind the play that I made, which is the very aggressive seg here for 28. It scores well. There's not that many plays that actually score better than this here. It certainly sets up my final S in another very dangerous way. So if I can draw a flexible combination, Mack is going to be somewhat hard pressed to both block both of my new spots with ifs and bibes, and again, also score enough points to feel comfortable. So I do this. Things are still really close, and it's back over to you with the second blank on your rack, and this is a really tricky turn for you as well.
I'm obviously super happy to see not only the blank, but also the F, which became a key tile after his play of if. But I was thinking, okay, if he just plays somewhere else, I'll play to the right, block that spot, and kind of coast to a victory. There will be no coasting here anymore because I figure Will very likely has the other S after Seg. And if he hits a 7-letter word with Bibes, it's not only going to be a bingo, it's going to be a massive bingo, double-double, getting points for Bibes easily over 100 points, which is going to win him the game unless I manage to bingo back. So I have a very tough decision to make. The first question I ask myself here, as I recommend doing when you have a rack like this, is do I have a bingo? And I spent, again, probably about a minute or two convincing myself that I don't, because I've got a very good line to bingo on the right. I also, by the way, have the L in cuticular, especially for the FUL ending. But once I convinced myself there was no bingo, I considered it at least 3 plays here. My highest scoring play by far is Faint, below the eye of Tatami, getting the F on the triple letter there. Scoring well over 40 points, but it has some clear drawbacks. It keeps the U, which is not a great tile. I'm actually not too worried about plays above the INT. There are no tiles like the Q that are going to hurt me above the I, but I felt I'm often not drawing a great rack with two Gs and two Vs still unseen. I'm opening another big S hook now with feints that potentially could be big for Will. I'm giving him an I to play through as well. So I didn't necessarily love that. I also just felt that he's almost certainly got another S, and the vast majority of words that or bingos that have an S end in the S, right? Just English language. There's a lot of words that have a plural of the S, and it's more of Will's bingos are going to play with ifs than are down the K column, statistically speaking. So ultimately, I decided it was best to block that line, and the best way to do that is to play enough, which still scores very well. It still scores 30 points for me, puts me back up by 45, and keeps a great lead in IT blank. I figured the I is actually a good tile for me to keep to play next to the G of Seg in case I'm able to bingo there, which would obviously be great, or even just make a play there to block if that becomes necessary. I didn't love creating the line down the N column next to the E of enough, but I liked at least that if Will were going to bingo there, he couldn't bingo ending in an S because, of course, SE is not valid. So yeah, another tough turn for me. I ultimately decided this was the right call given Will's range. Almost always includes the S.
Yeah, I love that last point that you mentioned that I've got the last S after a play like Seg and FE before that. And this move makes it impossible for me to play a simple terminal S bingo there, as you say. So I feel like if you're going to open that area of the board back on the N column, you've done it in a way that's hugely advantageous to yourself, holding IT blank as opposed to, I've got the S. As it turns out, if we go to the sort of branching paths and you do play feint, which again, enough and feint are very, very close, almost identical in the engine's evaluation. But had you played feint, I would have bingoed with violons through that I, which is not probably what you would have been expecting. After your play, my move becomes much, much tougher. I am going to struggle to score enough points to stave off a blocking play by you. Like on your next turn, if I don't open a new threat, something, anything in this spot is going to cut off all the activity except for very precise 8-letter words through whatever you put here. So I'm very concerned that if I don't open some kind of new threat on this turn, I'm going to be in some trouble. So the engine wants me to play solve here for 37, which could be maybe worth doing if I'm really going to pin my hopes on drawing something fantastic. But I feel like this gives up so much pressure in this situation where I really just want to keep the two spots that are already open between this last S hook, and then maybe I can draw something that fits on column N next turn. So I play Vo here just to try to create another threat long term that you're going to have to deal with on the left side of the board. It's not a very good threat. The V is not a good bingo tile, but it's better than nothing. It just sucks to not score that well and give up my E without the assurance that I'm going to draw another. But there were 3 more in the bag, so I'm hopeful that I can just draw one of those and draw something that starts with SO that I can play down the Bibes area. But meanwhile, you actually made a really cool play here where I think the logic is pretty fascinating.
You're probably at this point, guys, if you're astute, screaming at me like, "Well, Mac, just bingo, play triaged or gordita on the right? Score 70 points and you go up 100, and simple as that." Well, it's actually not so simple because the problem is there are exactly 7 tiles in the bag. And if I do this and I draw my 7 tiles, I empty the bag, and if Will bingo's out with almost anything, he's going to win because yes, I'm up 100. But with PVZ out there, one of two things are going to happen. Either Will's bingo is going to score a heck of a lot of points if he has those tiles, or if he doesn't have those tiles, well, guess
You
who's going to
will, yeah.
tiles? Exactly. I'm going to get them, and then Will is going to get the bonus points after he bingo's out. Like if there were 8 tiles in the bag, for instance, or more, then of course you just play Gordita and you win. Because if Will bingos, then I get another turn, and I'm not going to get caught with ZPGV or whatever on my rack. The pool is not great, but keep in mind, I'm definitely pegging Will on the S at this point after his play of Seg. I still think he's got the S. And after a play like Vo, it turns out he didn't have an E, but I figured he was fairly likely to have another E. But I found another cool play here. I was very close to variated, so I was like, what if I just do something crazy and drop the G and play jog? Because I have the last A in the blank, so now Will cannot possibly use that V. There are no other hooks left. If I draw an E, which happens a decent amount, 3 out of 14, I just auto win because I'm bingoing with variegated for 90. He can't stop it. If he bingos, I bingo out and win. That's the key here, guys. If Will bingos now, I'm the one who bingos out and I win. There's a lot of bingos that I'm going to hit here in various parts of the board. The the one drawback to this play that maybe I didn't consider as much as I should have is, of course, well, what if Will doesn't bingo and he scores well in the meantime?
Of course, I draw another E as I was hoping, and I draw the Z, and I really have no choice here but to play Zen. It scores about as well as I can get. There are other plays like Zoos that I can play for 45, but of course I'm going to take the 40, leaving the SO combination on my rack to continue to threaten something with Bibes. Really nothing to think about here, and the crazy thing is, after all that, I'm now ahead by 1 point, incredibly, as we go back over to you. And after your G play of jog, you draw another G from the bag, so you have some Groundhog Day here.
Yeah, exactly. And this kind of goes back to my point on my last turn, right? Will, of course, did not have a bingo, so had I bingoed immediately, then I would have won the game without any sort of stress or incident. And now I'm in actually an even worse spot, right? Because I can still bingo with Gordita here, but now there's still the issue that if Will bingo's out, he has caught up enough that even though he won't catch me with the Z, it's going to be enough. Something like Or Pines, which would bingo out catching me with ELV, is still going to win by a couple of points. And now the other problem is I'm not winning anymore, guys. So I don't have the luxury of just sort of stalling and making some one or two tile play that scores very little, because then there's theoretically a possibility that I could even lose in the endgame without Will bingoing. So here I felt, okay, I have to just bingo now, take it while I can. And if Will bingoes out, he bingoes out. It's still relatively unlikely, like Inverse or Pines. There may be a couple others, but I felt with the majority of his possible racks, if I bingoed to the left of enough, that if he had sevens on his rack, they actually were not going to play because he has to either start with SI or SO or start with an I or an O, which is not that easy. There's also a few possibilities like oversell to the L, but again, more bingo racks don't play than do play, so I think there's nothing to really discuss here. I have to just bingo and more or less cross my fingers that Will doesn't do the same.
Not bingoing is just too huge of a risk of getting outrun. Even if I don't have a bingo, I'm going to have a very solid score a lot of the time with my Bibes hook, and you could be in some serious trouble in some of those end games depending on what you draw. So yeah, Gordita is the play. I have 7-letter words on my rack. They just don't fit on the board. You dodged it. I played Sipe, which is grudgingly the best endgame play, just to score a number of points, knowing that you are going to go out on your next turn, which you do in your best spot with Vary for 14, leading to a final of 368 to 428. That was a really good game. I really enjoyed it. A lot of fun turns to sort of cut our teeth into.
I agree. It was a really well played game. And yeah, I'd always rather games come down to that versus, somebody misses something, right? Misses something obvious or whatever. So yeah, certainly relieved to escape with this one because it was while I was generally ahead for most of this game, it was far from a straightforward win or a straightforward game whatsoever.
Yeah, it was a great game. After it, you move into first place overall in the tournament at 10-2, and I fell back to sixth place, but that was still so early, like you said, plenty of time. And yeah, it basically sets the stage for us to meet again later. Our second matchup of the tournament came in round 22 when we were in first and second place in the standings, and it was another extremely dramatic and strategic battle. You can find our analysis of that game over on Mack's channel, link in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, you will surely enjoy that one as well. And as always, thank you so much for watching.